Welcome back to another episode of the Chasin Altitude podcast. Today I'm joined by Stephen, an airline pilot based here in the UK. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what first got you into wanting to become a pilot originally?
Okay, so for me, I've been flying commercially since 2019, but my aviation journey started my parents got me a trial lesson when I was back like 14, 15, as they do as a kid. It's, you got the bug. I always had the bug before that. Weirdly, before I wanted to be a pilot, I always wanted to be an astronaut, but I kind of realised that was slightly out of reach. I mean, as a kid, weirdly, I used to love films like the film Apollo 13 and things like that. They were great films, but I realised let's go for something a bit more sensible, quote unquote. So, I started my PPL back in 2012, a place called Stapleford Flight Centre, which wasn't too far from where I grew up in Essex. Did that over about 18 months while working full-time, built my hours, and then my first commercial job was the beginning of 2019 for an airline called CityJet based in Dublin. And that was flying, which is probably now very non-existent, the Avro RJ based on the 146.
Okay.
Which was very challenging, but also I loved it. It was such a great first type. I mean, one thing I always say to people when they're going for their first airline job is whatever you can get flying, whatever you can, just grab it with both hands, because you just don't know. You just don't know what, your first job's going to be. So any jet time, any flying time, any turboprop time, just grab it with both hands and enjoy it.
So if we could take you back to the start of your journey, you said you started at Stapleford. Can you take us through that first lesson and how you was feeling?
It was kind of excitement, but also it's weird. You really want to impress and you want to really do well, but you have no benchmark looking back. You're like, I have no real benchmark to work on. And the first lesson when you look back, because I subsequently became an instructor, the first lesson you do essentially is, yes, you let them have control and things like that and do like effects of control and all that kind of stuff, but it's a very, very mild introduction to what you're actually doing. And it's just incredible how you look back and it's just kind of, it's one step that just like builds the whole foundation essentially of the rest of your life. And
for people that listen that want to become a pilot, obviously there's a lot of talk on modular versus integrated. Did you do the modular route yourself? I
did modular because when I left school at 18, I never went to university. And for me, I just kind of paid as I went and there was no upfront costs. It was literally like, with that, I was never out of pocket. I kind of saved money as I went through work. And also what I found is it was very good to have a work or a kind of a job, shall we say, outside of aviation. Because someone told me ages ago, for some reason, say I suddenly, lost my medical or something like that, I've built up a career outside of work. So for me, I was kind of progressing up the ladder in my non-aviation job while still doing my flight training. But said that, beginning of 2016, I kind of went to what I like to call a full-time contractor. So I would do 6 months contracting work in what I was doing previously, and then have 6 months off to do, say, 6 months of full-time ground school, go back to work, save some more money. And then, because things like the ground school for ATPLs plus the multi-engine IR, I knew I wanted to do full-time because I couldn't do that while doing a full 9 to 5, 40-hour week or whatever.
Yeah, I've got all that to come, the ATPLs. I currently dispatch at the moment, so
nice.
It's going to be interesting.
I did that during COVID. It's good fun. I did that at Luton, and it does keep your hand in. And you know what? Looking back in hindsight, I wish I'd kind of joined an aviation job from 18, whatever it may be, because obviously you get the exposure, you've got contacts, you're meeting pilots, and they're always so grateful for what you're doing, because without them, they can't leave. They're very grateful 100%. For what you're doing. And you see 100%. The same faces, and it's amazing how you never know, could be 5-10 years down the line, that person that you've been chatting to might be just sitting on an interview and be like, oh, I know this guy, he's always bringing the paperwork on time, it's just like, you never know who you're going to run into.
Hopefully on time, yeah. That's always the aim.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like you're rushing from stand to stand, aren't you? I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. In terms of your personal training journey, what did you find the most challenging throughout all your ratings, would you say?
I think for me, going from, because when I did my professional training, due to the hours in the little group that I was in, I did my IR first and then went back to my CPL. And weirdly, because IR is very procedural, air traffic light, turn red heading here, climb here, it's all, you can pretty much plan for it. Whereas the CPL, they're like, oh, it's just like a PPL, but on tighter tolerances. But because you've got to make all like your suddenly decisions and you're like going back to like VFR map reading, I suddenly found from going from IFR back to VFR, weirdly, it took me a few flights to kind of get back into the swing of things, to be honest. It was a very weird transition, shall we say.
Do you prefer flying IFR or VFR?
IFR there's less thinking about, but it's obviously a lot more regulated. Whereas VFR, I mean, I haven't been for a while, but I do love the freedom of just taking a nice aircraft. And I've got a friend who's got a sharing one in a place called Little Granston, which is not that far from me.
Yep.
And he said, "Do you want to go flying for the day?" And we just casually went to the Isle of Wight, went to a little cafe by the beach. It was very nice. Had a bit of sunshine. It felt like a mini holiday. Flew back. It was lovely. You know, I do miss that kind of thing because it's once you get back into it, I find doing VFR, you're making more of the decisions yourself. So obviously you're more responsible for your lookout and it builds up your awareness that bit more. Whereas if you're flying in Class A airspace, they'll tell you of other aircraft, they'll avoid you from other aircraft. So it kind of takes a lot of the processing power away, kind of thing. You don't need it as much.
I think it's quite common for most airline pilots to sort of forget their routes in a way because you're so busy with your job, flying for the airline. I think the majority of people don't actually fly the smaller planes anymore. So I think it's nice to
No,
hear
and I
people
mean,
that do.
and that's one thing actually when you say oh sorry, one thing you say about the integrated versus modular is a lot of people don't realize that when they finish an integrated training course, they don't always finish with an SEP, a single engine piston rating. They then have to go to then I've had it before, students come to when I used to do instructing out of Cranfield and they thought they could just get signed a piece of paper and off they'd go. But actually it's usually if they've done it on all fan angled, glass cockpit screens, a lot of small clubs are back to like steam dials like the PA28, which is what I originally taught on and also learnt on. So for them, they're having a hard time transitioning from digital screens down to like analog screens and analog dials, as I say. And it's usually more than 5 hours to get them signed off to then get an SEP on their license.
Yeah, well, I think being a pilot comes with a lot of nerves and pressure. I'm sure it has for all your ratings as well. How do you personally handle nerves and pressure in the early days and even now?
It sounds like a proper interview question, that doesn't it? Like, for me, I mean, I do try and get out every day for a bit of exercise. Like I was just chatting with the captain I'm flying with this week at breakfast, and in about an hour or so, we're going to go for it's about an hour's walk, and we're going
Oh,
to
very
end
nice.
up at there's an M&S. We'll go there, we'll grab some lunch, and we'll walk back, and it's quite nice here in Edinburgh at the moment. I'm just looking out the window. It's actually nice, quite still winds and quite blue sky, and it's just a bit of vitamin D because I fly cargo and we do predominantly our flights at night time. We don't get any days because you're usually sleeping in the day.
Yeah.
You become literally nocturnal for the week. So to get out and just get some sunshine, it's just kind of simple pleasures. And I've never been one to go for the gym. I'm not really a gym goer kind of person. I mean, I'll go swimming, but for me, if I can just go for a walk, plug my headphones in, listen to some music, listen to an audiobook, or just call my mum for a catch up kind of thing, it's before I know it, I've done about 3 miles and I feel quite good about myself.
That's all you need, a nice walk and a nice coffee, especially Edinburgh. I went there a couple of
Oh,
years ago and it's a lovely place. I assume it's still
oh,
quite nice now, but
it is
seemingly
lovely. And
quite
the
nice.
hotel, yeah, the hotel they put us in, it's not far from the airport, but it's kind of a bit like a country one. So it's got nice grounds. And in the
Lovely.
summer, you can just literally just go out there and it's just like, this is quite nice. You just can
Yeah,
and the
beautiful.
food is, I do love that they do haggis at breakfast, which I know is not everyone's taste. I completely get that.
You're a
But for
fan of
me,
haggis, yeah?
it's weird. I try not to think what's in it. It's like when I gave someone once about 10 years ago. I said, "Oh, try this," and they ate some black pudding, and then they realised what was in it, and they're like, "Whoa."
Yeah, no good.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, "Oh, it's lovely. It's good protein," and they're like, "No, no,
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 definitely
no, no."
not. I'd like to take you through your early days of being an instructor at Cranfield.
Yes.
Take us through the process of becoming a flight instructor here in the UK, and is it something you've always wanted to do?
If you'd asked me back when I started commercially in 2019 with my first airline, I didn't really think about it. It'd always been in the back of my head, but never really thought about it. But then, obviously, like I said, with the combination of Brexit, COVID, and all that, and to be honest, because I still had under the magic 500 hours multi crew, which is usually the magic jet hours that airlines look for, some airlines I'd apply for, and they're like, yes, you've got experience, but you're under 500 hours, so we still deem you as a cadet. I was in that weird intermediate
Right. Okay.
stage. And one airline, which I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, if you're not a cadet, they won't charge you for the type rating. And if you are a cadet, it's like, can you give us 30 grand, please? And I'm like, that's kind of a deposit on a house. That's yeah. So, and I was like, not really. That wasn't for me. So when I got into instructing, it was you essentially do the PPL again, but as an instructor. So it's 30 hours flying. You do 5 hours what are called mutual flying, which is between yourself and another instructor. You go up and you basically like teach each other and just kind of give each other feedback. and then about 100, I think it's 125 hours of ground school on like how to teach, how to approach teaching, going through lesson plans, and essentially just go through the whole briefings of each lesson with someone that pretends to be a student, and then you just kind of give the whole lesson plan, give them a debrief, and essentially it's just going through it all, and they'll give you feedback, and then at the end you do a skills test where the examiner will pick a completely random lesson. You'll plan it, brief it, talk through it. You'll do a long brief, which is about half an hour, and the long brief could be anything you want. Could be, I think I had to do something about fog and frontal systems, which is always an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like orographic fog, yeah, and all that fun stuff. It's you'll learn about this in ATPLs. You'll realise there's so many types of fog that you really end up not caring.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, literally some of the stuff in aviation, you're just like, why am I learning this? Why? But yeah, and then you do that, and then in the air, you'll give a lesson that they told you about, and then they'll just pick a random topic out the blue and say, oh, can you teach me this? And then you'll just they'll do what's called pattering. So you'll talk the person through it, and then you'll demonstrate it to them as like pretending that they're a student. Then they'll do it themselves. You'll critique. They'll do things that are not always, like they'll deliberately do things that aren't 100% all correct, just so that you can critique them and like get them to improve and this and that. So it's good. It's kind of a bit of a role playing, but it's not until, it's like anything. It's not until you actually start teaching live students do you realise, that's where you kind of like start building up your knowledge as such. I found it incredibly rewarding, and I still do some teaching here and there now. But what I do like that, because you do what's called a part one teaching learning module, which is essentially how to teach, because a lot of people think, oh, you just talk it. No, there's a knack to how to teach. It's like the different colours on the whiteboard and what colour title should be, and this is red, this is blue, this is green, this is black, and all that kind of stuff, and how you draw things up on the board. And for me, it was, so once I got around that, you go through it, and then I found just once you actually then see students learning what you're doing, and then I'm still in touch with some students now that have now passed their PPL skills test and all things like that. It is tremendously rewarding. And for me as well, I'd like to then advance using my instructor rating, the part one teaching, to then maybe I could go to become like a ground instructor in an airline, or even one day become a TRI or even a TRE. That would be, you can use that teaching learning module. It's a kind of a universal aviation thing to then take it forward, because you've got the ability to teach.
That's one of the reasons why I want to become an instructor as well, for that rewarding sense. I think every instructor I've spoken to so far has said how rewarding it is. What's the most rewarding experience you had with a student?
I think, I'm just trying to think now. I think there was one student who I taught at Cranfield. He was from the Netherlands, and I'm still good friends with him today. And I think for him, when he had a bit of a struggles because he has diabetes.
Okay.
And he initially could only manage to get a class 2 medical. And actually recently they've changed the law and he's managed to get a class 1. So he's like the happiest man alive because he can go through his training. But for him, it was always in the back of his head. And he had this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a thing that goes on your arm that basically transmits to your watch, and it tells you what your blood sugar level is. So as well as thinking about doing a navigation, everything like that, I think it's about every 10 minutes he had to make a log of what his blood sugar was, and for him it was, I think it was quite a lot of extra things to think about when you're already maxed out as it is. So for him, when he passed, he was like, the happiest man alive. And it was just, I think it's just really rewarding, and I'm still in touch with him today, and he's now he's got his class 1. I think he's looking to go literally like get his all his commercial training done as soon as possible.
I saw it the other day, funny enough. I think it was a post about Qantas. They posted about a pilot that just got his type 1 class 1 through having diabetes as well. So
yeah, they obviously there's still a bit of a big loop and hoop to jump through, but it's no longer if you've got it, nope, see you later.
Yeah, I think it's always been quite cutthroat, hasn't it, in terms of that. So it's nice that they're opening up a little bit.
Because I know there was, I can't remember what his name is, but there is one pilot that managed to campaign to get a class 1 medical despite having, I think it was HIV as well.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Yeah, so they are, I'm not saying lenient, but they're a lot more open. They'll look at people's medical records, and you could have had diabetes your whole life but never had what's it like called, a hypo or something like that, and you could be absolutely fine. So I think it's obviously case by case, and they will do a lot of referrals and make sure you're all good. But they are, before it used to be, no, carte blanche, on the qualifying questions. And I heard of stories of people ticking that they haven't got diabetes just to try and get a medical and things like that. And just because once you've got a class 1, maintaining it is a lot easier than getting the initial.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I heard of someone that never even realised they were colourblind
Oh, really?
because it's like really subtle. Because you get those little books with those little, those dotted circle
Yes,
number things that
I
you've got to
remember.
look at, and they didn't realise until they did that. They're like, "Yeah, you're slightly colourblind." They're like, "Am I?"
Yeah, I think it's probably the most medically in depth they're going to go, isn't it, with the class one? So I've had a class
Yeah,
two, but I'm sure the class one's much more in depth than the
it's one
class
of
two.
those things that I always say. I mean, I'm not saying bang, get it straight away, but if you have the money to get an initial class one and you've already held a class one, it's that much easier. Even if you let it lapse to a class two for when you say if you're doing a PPL or something like that, because you've already held a class one, it's kind of that much easier. Whereas going for your initial, you don't want to do all the outlay, do your exams, and then you suddenly realise there's something wrong. Find out early on that you can actually get a class one.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. As an instructor as well, what are the habits you see students pick up that are quite hard to unlearn later?
I think in the days of I mean, this sounds like I'm an old man. When I did my PPL, there's no such thing as Sky Demon, for
Okay.
example.
Yeah.
And I've had students before, like they've planned a plog and they've put really weirdly specific like winds on their plog. It's like 322 degrees at 18 knots. I'm like, aha. I was like, where'd you get that figure from then? And they're like struggling to find like the 214, 215 that's got like the wind on it or something like that. I was like, no. If they'd said put 320 at 20, I probably wouldn't have batted an eyelid or something like that. So I think today they just feel they can plug it into the computer and all is hunky dory. And I think, I've read reports before of students before, like, well, not students, just pilots, like, their iPad's overheated in the sun
Yeah.
and the iPad shut down for 5 minutes and suddenly I freaked out because they don't know where they are.
Yeah, that's bad. That's
And I'm
very,
just
very
like,
bad.
that's terrifying. It's a bit like, it's like, oh, my sat nav's broken. I don't know where to go. I was like, well, you know,
Yeah, you need to
and
know.
sometimes it's, yeah, I know. And I mean, I had one student that used to swear, I'd never used it before. It was a thing called Garmin Pilot.
Okay.
And they were like, on their plug, they put like a waypoint of like, rather than the town or whatever you were flying over, it was like a random coded identifier, which Garmin Pilot had given them. I was like, I can't read this because I don't know what it's saying to me. And they're like, oh, but I know where it is. I was like, I don't care. You
Yeah.
need to put the town that you're flying over because that. And yeah, it's just, and also a lot of light aircrafts like DA40s, they do have like an integrated autopilot, a lot of them. I know a lot of schools do pull out the circuit breaker and like cable tie them off, but it's amazing how like you look at flight radar when they've been flying and like that's very specifically straight line that they're flying. It's just like, why are you not enjoying the light aircraft flying that you know?
Yeah. Sort of
But
too automated.
yeah,
If you had someone that was struggling throughout their sort of PPL or any rating, what strategies would you use to sort of bring the best out of them and overcome a fear, for example, or maybe a stopping point in their training?
I think for them, I think it's just try and make it as personal as possible. Like, no one goes through flight training, plain sailing, that everything's all hunky dory and no issues whatsoever. I think it would just be to find out what the stopping gap is, find out what exactly like the issue is, talk it through with them. And again, I'm, as people say, I'm a very much a people pleaser, but it's one of those things, just kind of like sitting down with them. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, that's £30 an hour to sit with you, but it's just sit with them and go through what the issue is, because it could be sometimes the smallest thing that's manifested in their brain and they've escalated it in their mind and they've turning in their sleep and can't think of it. And then sometimes you get over that little road hurdle and they're happy days, they're happy as anything.
Yeah, I've noticed with my past, I've had a few instructors, but a couple of them weren't as accommodating as the others. So
Mm.
if it just, like I say, it's just that extra 5 or 10 minutes
Yeah,
is
and I mean,
needed, and then that just gets you so much more, saves money in the long run for the student
well,
as well.
yeah, I mean, because I remember my old PPL instructor. I mean, I'm still in touch with today, and I think he's only doing like a few mornings a week now. He's in his 70s, but I still catch up with him from time to time, and I'll still go to Stapleford. Also, I'm passing by, let's meet for a coffee. And for him, because it wasn't his main career, like he'd had a whole life before aviation. I think he'd like, because when I flew with him, he was like in his, I think he must have been like late 50s kind of thing. But for him, he had took that extra time because for him, I think he did like, he had a police pension, he had a navy pension. For him, the instructing salary really wasn't that big a deal, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So for him, he could take that extra time, which is what you want. Whereas like people that are relying on that money, I think it's kind of like all done, thanks, see you later. Next student, it's like boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom, boom, boom.
100%. You lose that
Whereas like
personable side, don't you?
yeah, whereas like you say, that extra 5 minutes with someone can just make all the difference.
100%. I'd like to take you forward to the first airline job that you had. How difficult was it to land your first airline role?
I thought you meant the actual airliner itself. No, the first job. I mean, like anything in life, it's all about who you know and contacts. Now, for me, so my first job was with CityJet, based in Dublin, and initially when I applied to them, they were like, "Oh, you don't have the hours. See you later." But then I helped out at a pilot careers fair with Simtech because Simtech is who I did my MCC jock with over in Dublin. And from helping out with them, I essentially met CityJet again, but in a different kind of capacity. And one of the trainers from Simtech actually then put me forward, and then they saw me in person and kind of they invited me for an interview. They kind of called me out of the blue. It's quite funny. I was in South America and my phone started ringing. I was like, "Who's this?" And it was like a +353 number. I was like, and it came up Dublin. I was like, "Oh, I answered it," and it was probably the most expensive call I've ever made. But yeah, I answered it and accepted an interview over the phone, literally like from it was. So it's kind of all about contacts. I mean, it's luck of the draw. I mean, some people are very lucky. You find they get a job within 5 minutes, but then other people, I mean, a friend of mine's only just got his first job after about 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's crazy
Yeah.
how different people's journeys can be.
I mean, and that person, I mean, again, this is no disrespect to the guy. This first job that he's just got, I mean, he got sold the integrated dream, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
But sadly, with integrated, unless you meet specific criteria that they want, they won't help you as much as other people who've got a higher, say, ground school average or this, that, the other. So I know someone that's literally just finished at an integrated school and they're struggling at the moment because I think their ground school's below 85% average. And usually that's a big caveat for airlines. So they're a bit deflated at the moment.
Yeah, especially when you put your whole life savings on it as well for most people.
Well, yeah, that or their parents. I mean, I mean, they're in their early 20s and I'm just like, that is just, yeah.
Crazy. You mentioned interviews. That's one topic I wanted to touch on. If we've got people that are listening that have upcoming interviews for their first airline role, any tips you have for them, and how was your interview process when you were going through it?
I always say treat the interview as just a nice friendly chat, but keep it formal. So first things first, research the company. So learn things just like when it was founded, who some key members are, then things such as like if they've got a company ethos or like moral like values and stuff like that. Then facts about, I usually do, what their call sign is, how many aircraft do they have, where they're based. And 9 times out of 10, if you've rattled off things like that, they're like, yeah, they've done their research. They just want to see that you've done a bit of research about the company. They just don't want to see that you're going in and being like completely blind about the company. And then usually it's some competency-based questions. So it's give us an example of a time of X, Y, Z. So usually they're kind of like, they're not hard. It's kind of because you're on the spot to ask. And I did find with my current airline, one interview question they asked me, I said, I can't think of one at the moment. Can we come back to it? So they were absolutely fine with that. And then it came to me later in the interview, which was absolutely fine. It's just finding the examples. And I think having some life experience before from working from 18, it gave me some good life experience that I could draw on because they're not looking for specific aviation examples. They're looking for just how you dealt with situations. And they usually say with the competency-based questions to do what's called the STAR method, which is the situation, the task, the action, and how and the result. And when you go through those four processes and they can see that you're doing it, it's a big plus for them because it kind of also organises the answer in your mind. Might be, say, give us an example of a time you've dealt with an awkward employee or something like that. And they want to see that you dealt with it professionally without pointing the finger and saying it was you. But also, you're professional about it and, you learned from it and how you dealt with it, and that, aviation, they try and be a very just culture, things like that. So obviously they want to say you're not throwing your colleague under the bus and be like, not my problem anymore.
Yeah, we get that at my place all the time. And then when you pass the interview process and your base training, everything like that, how was the first day flying the big jet?
I mean, with most airlines, well, I think all airlines, when you start your first, date, you will have a safety pilot in the jump seat, and they will usually do a lot of the admin tasks. So I've done safety pilot duties here where I work at the moment. It could be like you're just doing updating the flight plan on the iPad, could just make sure that's all good, because then the line trainer can focus purely on their flying ability,
Okay.
and it kind of takes a lot of away from them. So for the first maybe 10 flights, 6 to 10 flights, you've got someone there as a bit of a safety net. Then they suddenly go, oh, you're at a standard and we're taking the safety pilots away. And you're like, okay. And it's just you, I mean, with my first airline, because you've got passengers as well, and then you've got cabin crew, it's kind of a lot more to think about. Whereas flying cargo, as I do at the moment, it's quite good because you haven't got any passengers to think about boarding. The high loader, as appears at the side of the aircraft. You go, oh, you open the cargo door. The loaders are doing all their things, and it gives you time to actually dedicated time to brief. Whereas I found with passengers, there's always one thing where they're like, oh, sorry, can I just ask? There's always a bit more interruptions as such.
Yeah, there's always something with passengers. Do you prefer
Yes.
flying cargo compared to passengers, or are you not too
There's
fussed?
merits to both. I mean, I did enjoy passengers because I've still got on the had on the fridge at home. Like flew into London City once, and there's this Irish family where the kids had drawn like an aircraft and just like giving it to us.
Oh wow.
And it's one of those things. It's just like really heartwarming, and like it's like little 4-year-olds going Merry Christmas and gives you like a little drawing they've done. You're like, it's just really nice.
Yeah, that's
It's
lovely.
it's just absolutely sweet, and they were going to like I think London for the day for like all their Christmas shopping, a bit of a day out, and it was really nice to see. And I know people have I think someone I know used to work for EasyJet, and they used to fly up to, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like basically Lapland,
Oh yeah, nice.
and they said they've never seen so many excited children, and it's just literally like they are buzzing to go on that holiday, and it's quite to get them there, like everyone is so grateful. You're like, it's my job, but no, like the kids are like jumping with joy. Cargo, I mean, sadly a lot of cargo goes at night, so you do a lot of unsociable hours,
Of course.
but some people are like, boxers don't talk back and get angry at you, boxers don't get drunk.
That's very true.
I mean,
Especially in
did
the
you see
summer.
that viral video of the certain red airline that had a bit of a brawl on board?
I certainly did. Yeah.
Yeah, that
You
was
don't get that
terrifying.
flying cargo.
I saw that, and I mean, it's just terrifying. I was like, that is. I mean, the cabin crew was shrieking in sheer terror,
Yeah, it's horrific.
and yeah, I mean, that's just horrifying.
It should never
That,
happen, really, but it does, doesn't it? I mean, there's been
but
quite a few that
sadly,
have
I
been
mean,
diverted because of that,
I,
and
I had it before with CityJet that I flew. We flew just between Dublin and London City, and these passengers essentially opened their own duty free, which is always a big no no.
mm,
Promptly drank said duty free, and they got pretty, for a 1 hour flight, give or take, got pretty drunk on board. And then I remember getting this call saying that they were like shoving the cabin crew, and it's just like, oh. So you have to
oh
get the
wow.
police on arrival, and then the paperwork is just like reams and reams, and the captain's got to do a captain's report, and it's just stuff you don't need. I'm just like, what? It's an hour's flight. I was like, do you really need to drink your duty free? I mean, not, but that's why they put it in one of those bubble bags. I don't know what the law exactly is, but you're not actually allowed to drink your duty free. But
People don't
this
listen, do
is,
they? Talking about the negatives of flying, are there any misconceptions that you've seen now that you've been an airline pilot for a couple of years that you think?
I I think when you're a kid, you build it up to be this miraculously like massive, glamorous job. You think, oh, this is amazing. You're going to do all this, all that. And everyone always like, especially like in this airline, everyone thinks, oh, you're in Edinburgh for a week. Go to the castle, go to the Fringe, go to this, go to that. I'm like, yeah, but I finish like this morning. I'll finish at 6 in the morning. I'll probably go to the first seating at breakfast and then probably crawl to bed about 8 a.m. Probably wake about, I don't know, 2, 3-ish, something like that. Then about 6, I'll go for dinner with the captain, and then we report about 9:30. And everyone's like, "Oh, you get all these glamorous spots." I was like, "No, you really don't." I mean, I've got a friend of mine. He used to fly Concorde, and he's literally not that far off retirement.
Wow.
And he said, "Yeah, when you used to get 4 days in Barbados, yeah, great. The heydays in like the 80s were lovely. You used to get like fly Monday, come back Friday. It was lovely. But now, if you've worked for like any of the big main carriers, from what I've heard, is literally you do probably 4.5 trips a month. You probably go day one, you probably land at mid-afternoon one day, and then day 3 you're early doors reporting, and so you might get a day of doing something, but
Yeah.
you've got to think, oh, I've got to then get some rest on top of jet lag, on top of this, to then, yeah. So I think, yes, it's good to have the dream, but then, like you say, it's not as, everyone always thinks it's going to be always miraculously lovely job, but then they realise you've got a yearly medical, which you've always got to maintain, 2 sim checks every year, one for your license, one LPC, one OPC, you've got that. Then you have a line check every year to make sure, that the trainer sits in the jump seat, make sure you're still flying with SOPs. You have a lot every year to make sure to keep your still keep your job, basically. And I still get quite nervous for the sim still. I mean, some people go in just going, oh yeah, what will be will be. But for me, I'm always conscious that, like, you've got to reach a certain grade. Yes, you're not going to get everything perfect first time, and there's always going to be stuff that they will happily stop the sim to teach you stuff, and then you'll do it again under test conditions. But there's always that worry in the back of your head, like, what if I don't crack it? What if this? So it's ask me in 20 years, I'll probably be a bit more blasé. But I know, like, the sim always, like, not petrifies me, but it was always like it's a nerve-wracking time because you've got someone literally like scribbling on a piece of paper next to you, like everything you do.
Yeah, I think it's always a bit of a nerve-wracking situation. I think even people that say they're not nervous are always a bit nervous, even if they don't admit it. Obviously,
Yeah.
you fly the 7-3. What's your favourite thing about the aircraft, and one thing you could change if you could?
Oh, I'm not an engineer. Oh, that's a very good interview question. Oh, I mean, obviously we fly the cargo variants, obviously, where instead of 189 passengers, we can take 10, 15 tons of cargo, and I don't know if there's anything specifically I'd change. I mean, we fly the classic 400s as well as the 800s, so
Okay.
it's quite good. I mean, they're still like, full digital screens and everything like that. I had someone come up to me saying, "Oh, you fly the old." I was like, It's still, it's still a jet." But yeah, sadly, people want all the bells and whistles and flying the Max and the A350 and all that stuff. But I mean, there's nothing I'd specifically change about the 737. I mean, I've never flown an Airbus, so I can't really compare. I do quite like that, you actually get a feel on the controls when you disconnect. Whereas I've been told the Airbus is very like, the air controls are very, very light and featherweight, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I had one on the other day, an A320 pilot, and they said the same, similar sort of thing.
Yeah, it's literally just like, they say essentially it's like point and shoot because we're doing everything like, you control, checking the power, doing the, the controls and everything like that. Whereas an Airbus pilot, they don't move the power in the same way a Boeing pilot does. You have a certain position and the computer will set the speed and keep that speed where it was. If you want 140 knots, if you wiggle around up, down, left, right, the speed won't budge.
Mm.
Whereas in the Boeing, if the speed gets a bit low, you've got to put power on a bit more, reduce a bit here, just anything like that. It's I think it's, someone said to me ages ago, and again, I'm not trying to sound arrogant because I've never flown an Airbus. They say if you fly, flying a Boeing, will improve your hands-on skills. Going from a Boeing to an Airbus, is like probably a lot easier than going from an Airbus to a Boeing. Because Airbus, yes,
Yeah,
they obviously got their hand. I believe they got their hands on the throttles when they land. But as soon as the Airbus shouts retard, retard, close, which is basically close to throttles, they just close the throttles and it tells them where to pitch up on the flight director to flare. So I'm not bashing airline Airbus pilots by
no,
any
no, of
stretch of
course
the
not.
imagination, but again, I'm sure Airbus has its own complications because I've heard there's a lot of it like you have to learn different control laws, which are like what's it doing now kind of thing. Yeah,
Monitor the
it's just
computer sort of thing. Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like got a lot of different things that like it's got like alternate law, control law, normal law, and yeah, it's like when it goes. And I mean, there's a bit like what was it that Air France 447? Do you know about that?
no,
I think it was like when was it? I think it was like 2014. Basically, it was a Air France 330. It flew into a bit of an ice storm, and like some of the pitos froze over, so it couldn't get the reliable information. So all it did was disconnect the autopilot because it's like don't know exactly what's right at the moment, and all it said was just maintain straight and level, and then it will sort itself out as and when once like the ice melts off the pitot probes. But for some reason, whoever's in the right hand seat went and pulled the stick back. But because the sticks don't move together in the Airbus, the people on the left never realised that they basically pulled it into a stall.
oh wow,
Yeah, and literally, the aircraft was going stall, 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 shouting at them, and they never realised for ages that the guy was just holding the stick back in the right, and it unfortunately crashed in the Atlantic Ocean. But yeah, literally, like they're like, "What's it doing now?" They couldn't work it out, and Yeah, if you go on YouTube, there's a very interesting documentary
Is there? I'll have
about
a look.
yeah, because I know that Airbus has this thing which is like you can override the other person's control and say priority left or priority right, but because the other person's control column doesn't move like it does in a Boeing, if you can't see that they're pulling all the way back, they just didn't realise.
I never knew that, so that's quite good to learn.
Yeah,
I never knew that. Yeah.
Air France 447. It's a very it's quite interesting. Lesson in CRM and all that.
I never knew the control column didn't move for one and did for the other. That's interesting. I never knew that.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Literally, like if you
Yeah,
move
right.
yours, it's like for example, I've been told if you in an Airbus, say you sat in the left and you went full right, and I went full left, they cancel each other out. It's like electrical
Wow.
impulses.
That's mental.
Yeah, I
Wow.
know. It's just like it's very very weird. I mean, but everyone's different. I've heard the 350 has auto TCAS, so if it goes climb climb climb,
Oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
it'll just yeah.
We've spoken about aircraft. Let's talk about destinations. What's your favourite destination to fly into, and maybe your least favourite?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm just trying to think where I've been. Which actually, one place with my current airline, which I did really enjoy flying to, was we flew because we fly cargo. We flew some racehorses to Deauville
Oh
in
wow.
North France, and we got there about 11 a.m. and then we weren't flying until 36 hours later. So myself and the engineer, we literally just went to the beach. It was very nice. It was a lovely day out, and literally it was went to the beach. We went for I think we got some like ice cream, sat there in the sunshine, 25 degrees. I was like, this is nice. It's like
Could be worse. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And because it was I wasn't flying for then again 36 hours later, we got one of those like French, those apple cider wines they have.
Yeah.
So we just shared that. It was very nice. It was very civilized. It was like day off down route. I was like, this is nice. And then it was quite funny that a few days before, my mum goes, "Oh, I've got some euros I don't need. You can take them with you." I was like, "All right." And I thought she was going to give me like shrapnel of like 10 euros. She whips out 120 euros in cash.
Nice.
So I put that in my wallet and like literally myself and the engineer go out for a really nice steak tartare dinner and everything. So it was absolutely lovely. That was really nice, and I did enjoy it. It's a lovely little because it's by the sea. It was just there's something about sea air. It's just very therapeutic, and I actually came back a little bit red, and it was which was nice. But then places I don't like. I mean, there's nowhere I specifically haven't liked. I mean, recently I flew into Casablanca in Morocco, which was very interesting because it's just understanding about obviously you get very blasé with UK ATC because it's very good.
Yeah.
Whereas then you fly to somewhere like, abroad, and obviously it's just trying to understand their accents and things like also when you fly into Paris, Paris is an absolute labyrinth. Just go on Google Maps and zoom out on the satellite view. It's a four runways, it's a labyrinth. And they speak French to other French aircraft, so you can't build up a situational when. I mean, my French is quite good, but trying to listen to what they're saying to other aircraft, you can't build up a mental picture because they. And sadly, if you go to places like Paris, if there's an Air France in front of you, Air France gets priority.
Really.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
at an intersection holding point, waiting to cross a runway, and there was like a queue of Air France and they just all went ahead, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, now you can go." It's just like, "Oh yeah, cool."
Welcome to France.
Yeah, literally. And I mean, this is probably going to get me into trouble, but French controllers can be in the air, they're super helpful. Get on the ground, they're like can sometimes be really the most unhelpful controllers in your life.
Really.
Like on the place, you had two ground frequencies, and they go, "Oh, contact ground." I said, "Oh, can you just confirm the frequency?" And the controller just went, "No." I was just like, "Oh, what?"
What's the attitude for? Yeah.
I was like, it's 3 a.m. I don't need this. I was
No.
like, I
Trying to
was
go
just like,
home.
and the captain was just like, just try either one, you'll get through to someone.
You mentioned the captain there. Obviously, from a first officer's perspective, what makes a good captain? Would you say, in your eyes?
I think one that has, understands from your perspective because they were all in your shoes one day. And there's one captain I've flown with in my current company who's absolutely brilliant. Now he's not a line trainer by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got a very great, big history behind him. I think he used to fly helicopters. I think he flew like police helicopters. He's really knowledgeable guy. And I flew with him again into Paris once, and he goes, "Oh, do you want to take this flight?" I was, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I'll fly into Paris." And he was giving advice, but not going, "Do this," kind of thing. He was kind of like, and then at the end of the week, he sent me quite a long WhatsApp, which was really nice, saying like, "Oh, you had a really good week, this was, and it's like really empowering. It's nice. I mean, I'm not one to fish for praise, but it's nice to get a bit of praise every so often, kind of thing.
Of course.
And I think for me, it's kind of a good captain will understand that, you're still a first officer, you're still learning, every day's a school day, and they were in your boot, feet where you were, sorry, they were in your shoes one day previously, so just, you know, if someone doesn't quite get something, just be patient with them. But not everyone's the same, sadly.
No, definitely not. I spoke to a line training captain a few episodes ago, and he said that being an instructor really helped him being a line captain, obviously because of the instructing side of it and teaching people. Is that something you'd like to do one day, to be a captain or a line training captain even?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I'd love to be a line training captain because I do, like I said, I enjoy teaching. It's rewarding, and I think there's a particular line training captain where I work at the moment. He's absolutely brilliant because he's very personal, very and that I feel being personal gets the best out of people. Because if you're like living in fear of what the person's going to say next to you, like you're always on like tenterhooks and like you kind of like that's taking up half your capacity. I mean, whereas if something goes wrong, let's talk about it. Let's just not make it a big deal. Let's just debrief. Let's it's life. You're never going to have a perfect week of flying. I mean, it's so for me, yeah, potentially if I did become captain, I would like to obviously become a training captain one day, and just I think it's good because you feel like you're giving back as such. Because some people like they want to do their day at work and go home and see you later. But for me, I'd be like, I'd love to give back, or if like I said before about going potentially be a ground trainer or just something like that, just to kind of. I don't like just sitting still. I'd like to always keep my brain going.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like a great person to learn from anyway. I mean, 100%.
Well,
In terms of the resilience, I think that you need to be an airline pilot. I've noticed myself in my journey, a lot of resilience is needed. Things happen, hiccups happen with finances and medical reasons, etc. How do you personally navigate sort of feedback and criticism throughout your journey?
I think any criticism and any feedback, just take it on board. I mean, I found the other day some notepads for doing my IR training, and there's always like scribbles of what to work on. This was good, and there's always, I find also being an instructor, there's always these bits where there's always good bits, there's always not so good bits, and there's stuff to work on. But as long as you kind of look at the good and say, this was, you did all this really well. Some of the bits to work on are quite minor, and I think with that, just kind of take any criticism on board because ultimately their job is to get you where you need to be. And if you could do it already, they wouldn't have a job. So, take what they say, take it on board. And I find with flight training, it's very much, you feel like everything's going good. And then suddenly you have a really shocker lesson and you're like, where did that come from? And sometimes it is. You think, but you just, I think I had one student come up to me saying, oh, I think Stevie Wonder could have flown better than me. Something like that. I still find that phrase always sticks in my head. It's hilarious. But it's, and I said to them, some days you just have an off day. There's nothing they did specifically wrong, but just sometimes you have all the knowledge there, but your brain doesn't put two and two together. And yeah, so sometimes you do have an off day and it happens. You're never going to always get everything right first time. I mean, I had a student that was really upset they didn't go first solo. So I made sure I spoke to operations. I said, look, let's get them in first thing when the wind's meant to be pretty calm. And all they needed was an extra half hour, and then bam, they went solo. And it was literally, that's all they needed. It was just that little finesse. And now since then, they're always, for them, that extra half hour lesson doesn't even bother them. At the time, it was like a huge mountain. But as soon as they, after that, they were just absolutely fine.
No, that's brilliant. If you do have a bad lesson, and I'm sure some people that are whatever part of the journey they're in that listen to this, how do you sort of reset after a said bad lesson?
Me as the student or me as the instructor?
Either or, both.
I think as the student, I'd say go to the instructor and say, what do you recommend I can go through and read, and kind of like what can I look into, kind of get a bit of focused material of where you need to go in order to get that, say, build that maybe that knowledge gap or anything like that. And sometimes if you do have a particularly bad lesson, I find having a day off helps because you get some sleep, your brain rests. And sometimes what I've said to students is if they're not flying the day after, and say it was like the afternoon, I'll say, look, don't touch the books until tomorrow. Go home, have a pizza, have a beer, just have a night doing nothing, like use another part of your brain. Play your Xbox, play your PlayStation, whatever. Just like do something completely different. And then if they do that, they have a good sleep. And then when they come back to reading, the brain is more receptive to absorbing what you need to read. So for them, it kind of makes their brain's done a bit of a reset, and it's more open to learning what they need to do. Because if you try and read stuff when you're like, I need to read this, and you get all het up, none of it's going to go in.
No,
None of it's going to go in. So I think if you do have a particularly bad lesson, just try and have like a bit of just a reset, and then just kind of start again fresh the next day. And I always say to them, every day is a school day. I mean, there's still stuff that I'm learning that, I'm like, oh, never knew that before. It's, never stop, always be like receptive to like feedback, because feedback, it's never always going to be all bad. Just learn from it. Just, take each day as it comes. And I think that's where going back to the whole modular versus integrated, I think having that modular approach, it just means you're not as like, I know integrated, they say, oh, we're not going to put you in a holding pool if you've got more than 10 extra hours and things like that. And so they build up that external pressure in their head. So there's a lot of like pros and cons. But anyway, going back to, so myself, if I have a bad day as an instructor, you're saying?
Yeah, if you like, that's perfect.
I think if I have a bad day as an instructor, I always feel as like, a CFI, a chief flying instructor or something like that, someone I can like speak to about this, because you can guarantee, I mean, I had an example of somewhere I taught where one of the students like kind of did quite a firm landing. And I think for me, it was, I'm not saying I was being a bit blasé, but they'd come to integrated training with, I think they had a PPL, they had a night rating, they'd flown gliders, they'd done, they're telling me all about their experience. So all I needed to do was check them out on some circuits. And for some reason, they did a really firm landing. I was like, it was completely out, I did not expect it. And for some reason, the day after, then when I was meant to fly with them, I got taken off the schedule, and my brain was like, well, what's going on here? So I went to speak to the chief flying instructor, and he said about, what happened. They spoke to him, and essentially they kind of tried to pin it on me. And the chief instructor goes, I've lost count how many students have said they don't want to fly with me. I'll just give you Joe blogs instead of Fred blogs. I was like, oh, okay. And he goes, yeah, it's not your problem anymore. He said, they feel empowered. They've managed to rant away. They're not flying with you. You're still getting paid. Go fly with Fred. I was like, all right, cool. See ya. It was like, you get days like that where, you feel like, students will always sometimes it feels like they always look to blame the instructor.
Yeah.
But I said to the CFI at the time, I said to them, to be fair, I gave them benefit of the doubt where they said all these hours they had, and I think it kind of, their ego got burst a little bit and they blamed me. But it was a learning point for me, because now even if the person's got, I don't know, 1,000 hours is a bit extreme, but you know what I mean? I will literally, if they're landing, I'll be like, this is not you. I'm just covering the controls just to basically save my backside.
Cover yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
That's always important, because it's always too late if not.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is though, the engineers did a check of the aircraft and everything like that of the one that did a hard landing, and the engineers were like, it's absolutely fine. It always feels worse than it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, they're built to, absorb that sort of impact, aren't they, most of them? Obviously,
I mean, so like I say, it's just, whether you're a student or instructor, you're always going to have, bad days.
100%.
It's part of life.
Exactly that. I do like to always have a segment on advice for the next generation. What's something you wish someone told you at the very start of your training?
I think as well as, well, not just training, but I think, like yourself, you're working in aviation now. And I think for me, because I worked in a completely different field to aviation, like nothing even remotely similar to it. And so for me, if I went back, I'd probably want to work in an airline or just some sort of aviation job, because you, like you say, you build up contacts, faces, and you never know where it might be even 15 years down the line. And they're like, oh, I remember this guy. It's just like, and just, I'm not saying be a people pleaser, but just be helpful, just like seem to be like proactive, and just people remember these things. I mean, and so for me, I'd say if you can work in an airline, even if it's just, I don't know, doing crewing, cabin crew. I mean, there's someone who works in operations where I work at the moment, and I think they're doing their ATPL ground school at the moment, but because they do shift work in crewing, it means they've got then dedicated, say, 4 days off at a time, maybe, that they can actually then go forward and study. Whereas for me, because I was doing 9 to 5, it was quite that's why I ended up doing full-time ground school, because I was like, I can't study in the evening as well as doing all this. But yeah, so I'd say for anyone coming through from the beginning, I'd say got the wrong teeth in. Do your due diligence on flight schools. A lot of big flight schools are very good at marketing, shall we say?
Yeah.
Because I've heard of stories of flight schools. Obviously, there's been, a lot of flight schools do go under quite regularly. And I think it's worth just looking at the finances, look on Companies House, and don't pay loads of money up front. Because the likes of, I won't say names, but yeah, like I know like some flight schools, if you do like say a full-time integrated course, before you even set foot in the door, you could be out 30 grand. Whereas a PPL, even with buying all your books, your headset and everything like that, maybe 10, 11, 12 grand. And that's given you an SEP, which, you don't always get with an integrated course. And for me going modular, I probably saved an absolute fortune. I mean, like I said, my friend that I know, like, he went integrated and he's only just got his first flying job.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's no guarantees. I mean, yes, they say, 95% of people got into our product placement pool at the end of it. But if the industry turns, airlines might say, well, we're not going to Joe Blogg's flight school because the industry's not great at the moment.
yeah, all it takes is
So
another COVID, doesn't it, for that to
yeah,
change quite quickly.
yeah, I know that was dark days.
Was you flying at the time in COVID, or?
Well, I left my current airline, the one that I was with, CityJet, or not current, the current at the time, CityJet, to join a company called Jota, because they used to fly 146s/RJs at the same time. And I was meant to join them, and literally like the day before I was meant to join, I got a call, and that was when all COVID broke out. And they're like, "I'm really sorry. There's nothing going at the moment. We can't start you because of they've had so many charters cancelled and things like that." So I was like, "Aha, right." So I went in a state of frenzy, March 2020, doing any work I could to kind of keep paying them rent and everything like that. And then they actually offered me some work from September 2020 to about March 21. And unfortunately, it was last in, first out. And with that, a year later, they'd actually gone bust.
Oh wow.
So for me, it was maybe a blessing in disguise, and that's why I went into instructing. But I'd say, you never know what's around the corner. I mean, so yeah, I think I'd say having a plan B in my back pocket or work that I'd done previously before aviation, it helped me. It kind of helped me get some contracting work when I was in need of work as such.
I think doing modular, because you see these stories of the integrated students as well, and they're obviously progressing technically faster than you. How do you stop yourself from comparing yourself to the faster progressing peers?
I think there's a lot of. Well, you say they're progressing as quick as quicker.
Supposedly.
Yes, but I mean, I'm not again mentioning names, but someone I know is at quite a big flight school at the moment. They finished their ATPL exams, I think it was May, June 2024, so call it 20 months ago. And I don't think they started their multi-engine training yet. So it's been nearly,
Wow.
call it 20 months, and yeah, and they're at a full-time big integrated school.
I think that's eye-opening for people listening. I think everyone should do their research before they do make the big
Yeah,
jump, as
I
you say.
mean, and also some research can also be as simple as looking at a Google review. If you search for a specific school in question and look at some of the Google reviews, some of them are pretty damning.
Hmm.
But again, I'm not, everywhere is different. I mean, I haven't spoken to them for a while. They might be flying multi now, but it's just one of those things that I know that when you finish your last ATPL exam, you've got 3 years to get your professional license through. So they're coming up on, out of 36 months, maybe about 21 of those. Still got to do CPL, IR, and their MCC or AQC as it's called now, and get their license issued before June 27.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that would be too much stress that I could deal with.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas, I mean, sometimes, it's the same piece of paper at the end of the day. It's a bit like if you did your full-time driving course or I did a full-time driving,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the same license. And people like BA and all that now, they're taking people fresh out of flight school. Whether you've gone modular, integrated, they don't really care. Because ultimately they're realising it's about the interview and the person rather than what flight school they went to.
Hmm. 100%.
But sadly, a lot of flight schools are very good at social media.
Yeah, very good. Well, Stephen, it's been a great conversation, mate. I've really, really enjoyed it. I think there's been a lot
Me
of
too.
advice that I've taken on board, and also the followers would as well. Before we
Yes.
close up, if you could leave them with one bit of advice, what would it be?
Don't pay money up front.
I
You
like that.
know, yeah, I mean, there's so much advantage to doing a PPL and just summer's coming up, just going for an explore in a light aircraft. Literally, I used to get one of the half mil charts and be like, where have I not flown? And literally, if you look at my hour building, it was just flying to random little places all around the country. It's like, where have I not been? And like, some flight schools will let, if you say, oh, can I borrow it for the weekend? And they say, oh, as long as you do a minimum of, I don't know, 3-4 hours a day to make it worthwhile, you can take the aircraft and you could like go all the way up to Scotland. I know someone that went all around the Scottish Highlands,
Oh, wow.
down to Oban, round there past Glasgow round, and then just like literally, and I was like, that sounds amazing. And they
Yeah,
got
it's
some
incredible.
incredible views. Like on that home, they've got like this big canvas of like the Scottish Highlands. Like they took just literally on their phone out the window, and they're like, "Oh,
Wow.
look at it!" Yeah, yeah. And it's like and just like they said, the best place they flew to was somewhere called Oban, which a friend of mine who lives in Canada says is the best whiskey, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, but like the Scottish Highlands, like literally, they said it was just so nice in the summer. You like the views are spectacular, and then also there's things like you can fly from like you could fly an hour and a half to somewhere like the Touquet in North France for the day. And if you do that, you can fly there, and then I think when you fly back, because of the time difference, it takes about an hour and a half, but you lose an hour. So in theory, it's only like half an hour. So if the airfield shuts
I
at like
see.
8 p.m., you could leave at like 6 p.m. French time, having got there about, I don't know, 9 a.m. French time, and have a whole day there. People say you can hire bikes, go to the beach, have some coffee bite, and I was just like, sounds like a great day out,
Yeah, that's the
and
first place I want to go to, Le Touquet, when I pass, because I fly out of
yeah.
Northfield myself, so a lot of them go there.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, you're not far from Stapleford, where I did my
No, yeah, no,
PPL.
I did my first discovery flight there, actually, funnily enough.
The famous celebrity that flies from Stapleford,
Who?
who says you're fired quite a lot on the TV.
Does he? I never knew he
He
flew from there.
does. Yeah, literally, like,
Oh, blimey.
yeah, I can say it. Yeah, you could put us in. But yeah, Alan Sugar's got a Cirrus based at Stapleford.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and he often literally, he just, he's got a Cirrus, and often you see him there, and people try and go up to him, and he just blanks them. It's quite amusing, really. I went to the cafe and I went to use the loos, and he was coming out as I went in, and I was like, "Oh, sorry." And he literally wanted me to stand out the way so he come out. I was like, "All right, all right."
Does he fly it himself, or is he?
Yeah, he's got his
Oh,
own
he does.
PPO. There's a documentary back from ages ago because the company he owns, Amstrad, used to be based in Brentwood by the station. And he used to, I think, have his own light aircraft license to like fly between the different factories and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Chasing Altitude podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, or give us a follow on Spotify so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Chasing Altitude. And if you're a pilot or anyone with an aviation background listening to this and you'd like to come on the show, drop me a DM. I'd love to connect. Have a great week and keep chasing altitude.